And joining us now, a key member of Donald Trump's inner circle, Sean Spicer, is the chief strategist, the communications director for the Republican National Committee. Sean, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf. I appreciate it.
Today, the president-elect told the New York Times, this lengthy interview he just granted him, and I'm quoting him now, he said, "The law's totally on my side. The president can't have a conflict of interest." What did he mean by that?
Well, he meant that the law is very clear, that they actually carve out the President of the United States so that that can't actually ever exist. Now, what it means is that for all of the talk, he is going above and beyond what the law requires in the way that he's going to make sure that there's a wall between his business and the way he governs. But I think what he wanted to make clear to them is that the law has been clear. The way it was set up was done so to ensure that the President of the United States was never able to be legally in a conflict of interest. And he was answering that question correctly and legally.
So what kind of wall is he talking about? His adult children are going to be in charge of the business. He's going to be talking to them, obviously. So what are you suggesting that wall will look like?
Well, there's two things. Number one, back as far as the first debate, he's been very open and very clear about how much he loves his family, how important his business is, and how he'd be set up. He was very clear. I'm going to run for president. I'm going to leave the business to the kids. So this has been something that the American people have known exactly where he stood from day one. Number two, over the next 60 days, as he prepares to transition to become the next president of the United States, he's going to work with the lawyers and the legal team to make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed, to ensure that there's every proper procedure is followed and taken care of to allow that transition to take place, so that he, from being a successful businessman to being a successful president.
So why is his daughter Ivanka Trump involved in meetings, phone calls with foreign leaders during this transition process?
He's not president of the United States yet. So
he is president-elect of the United States.
I understand, but in some of these cases, they're very casual meetings. So he's talked about the role of his family. He thinks they're extremely important. He's been, again, this isn't, somehow the idea that this is news is interesting, because he's been clear since day one that he values the opinion of his family. He loves their opinions and thoughts and values them as part of the decision-making process. So the idea that suddenly that something that he's been talking about for a year and a half is news is quite interesting.
Because in one of those debates, he said that there would be some strict guidelines, if you will, if he became president of the United States. A quick question on Ivanka Trump. Did she just listen in on that phone conversation with the leader of Argentina, or was she part of that conversation?
I actually don't know the details of that.
All right, let's talk about some other confusion now that's emerging. During the campaign, he pledged to prosecute Hillary Clinton. Today, he said he wouldn't do that. He's taking it off the table. He doesn't want to, quote, hurt the Clintons, and prosecuting Hillary Clinton, he said in his words, in this New York Times interview, would be very divisive for the country. You want to clarify what he intends to do?
Yeah, I'll be very clear. I put out a video yesterday. He talked about 5 executive actions.
No, what he intends to do, if anything, about Hillary Clinton.
Well, again, no, I'm answering the question. I think right now he recognizes that he was elected first and foremost to bring back jobs and change the way Washington works. And that's what, he started to lay out yesterday with this video that he put out about the first executive actions. And I think he's going to further lay out where his legislative priorities are. But he realizes the country's in deep trouble. He wants to help us grow jobs, restore the border, repeal Obamacare, institute a better health care system that's affordable and allows greater choice. So he realizes the magnitude of what's at hand, the number of appointments that he has to make, the number of people that he has to get ready to transition to government. He's had over 60 meetings so far, and I think he looked at that in terms of the priority of where that sat and the relationship that he has with the Clintons, and said, right now the focus is on the country, creating jobs, creating a better health care system, restoring a strong border and a better immigration system in this country. And so when you look at the level of priorities and the amount of work to be done, he just made it very clear that that's...
I just want to be precise, Sean. So all the chanting at the rallies, lock her up, when he suggested he would name a special prosecutor, when he said she belongs in jail, all of that is now gone. That was just talk then during the campaign. Now he's going to focus in on these economic issues. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is he didn't rule it out at the New York Times. He made it very clear that it wasn't a priority, and that his priority was that he didn't want to hurt the Clintons in any way, but he wanted to focus on making the country better and helping people lift people up and creating jobs and securing our border. So it's a question of priorities right now and a question of intent. He is now the president-elect. His goal is to make sure that every American gets lifted up from one coast to another.
In the same New York Times interview, he denounced white supremacists. He denounced the neo-Nazis who support him, said, and I'm quoting him now, "It's not a group I want to energize, and if they are energized, I want to look into it and find out why." Specific words. Tell us a little bit more. Should he go out and deliver a speech specifically denouncing these neo-Nazis, these white supremacists, saying if they think...
Look,
no, listen.
Every tweet,
I'm just asking,
claim.
should he go out there and deliver a specific speech and make that abundantly clear he doesn't want these people support and he condemns them?
When is it going to be enough? He has condemned everyone that's come out and supported him, every group that supported him. At some point, you've got to take, his position and go move on. But over and over again, somebody will come out and say, "I support Donald Trump." He has to denounce them. Someone tweets. He has to refute the tweet. At what point is his position clear? He has said that he refutes that. That's not the kind of movement that he wants to support or be energized by him. That's not the kind of people that he wants to be associated with him. And so I don't know how many more times Donald Trump can make his position clear, but it has been crystal clear for a long time and over and over and over again with every tweet, utterance, you name it, Facebook post, he has to somehow respond to it. He has made his position clear. It's time that we accept that position and move on, because that's not his focus.
So why do you think, Sean, these neo-Nazi groups, these white supremacist groups, and we saw them here in Washington over the weekend, you saw the video, why do you think they still support him?
I don't know. That's really not my focus, figuring out why certain groups support him. He won the election with tens of millions of people. I haven't sat down and figured out why certain groups, supported him or didn't. He won the election. His focus is on making the country better. But at some point, take his word as what it is. But to continue to ask him over and over again to denounce the same people, the same words, the same groups over and over again is getting a bit preposterous. His focus, his words, is uniting this country, moving us forward, creating jobs. I don't know how many times he can talk about that. But he is continually asked on this and other areas to repeat his position over and over again. And it seems a bit silly because that's not what his focus is.
Because he does it in response to questions, you're right, and he's very tough in response to questions, but he doesn't do it necessarily on his own initiative. For example, he hits the news media when he thinks there's a story that's unfair. He tweets when he's outraged about something in the media, Hamilton, what happened at the Broadway musical Hamilton. But he doesn't seem to go out of his way to express his outrage over people hailing him with Nazi salutes. Why doesn't he do that more dramatically, if you will, and make it clear he wants no part of these people?
Because I think it's asked and answered, Wolf. You've asked me eight times the same question. I've told you what his position is. That's because that's not his focus. His focus is making this country better for all Americans, creating a better country, creating a better education system for all Americans, rebuilding our inner cities. That's what his focus is. So I get that you guys all want to ask the same question over and over again and make him denounce it 8 ways to Sunday, but it's not what he wants to talk about. He's focused on making this country better, on lifting people up. And again, you're right. It's the news media over and over and over again asking the same question. But I don't know how many times he has to answer that question, and you figuring out the way and the fashion that he should do it next. I mean, if he gets out and gives a speech, then should he, write it in the sky in an airplane? I mean, at what point is it enough? I don't know, but I think he's been very clear, and it's time to move on.
I think what a lot of people would like to see is a formal statement. Similarly,
no, they wouldn't.
Wait a minute.
No, they wouldn't.
He did a 2.5-minute video yesterday outlining his economic plans for the first 100 days. Why not simply do another YouTube video like that and say, look, and directly address those people and say, you know what, you're not part of my team. I don't want your support. I hate what you're doing, and end it once and for all. Take the initiative instead of simply reacting when a reporter asks him a question.
Because I think Donald Trump's done a pretty good job of communicating an effective message to the American people. And while I respect and appreciate your ideas that what we should do, I think that Donald Trump's done a phenomenal job on his own of figuring out how to effectively communicate what the American people really want right now. And they voted on November 8th pretty unanimously in that favor.
Well, unanimously, I don't know about unanimously, but they certainly, he is the president-elect of the United States, and he won the electoral
pretty high
college.
electoral votes, yeah.
Yeah, that's all that matters. A quick question. In the New York Times interview today, I assume you were over there with him, he said that his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, could play a key role in negotiating an Israeli-Palestinian peace agreement. Talk a little bit about that. Would he be a special Middle East envoy?
Well, let's go back to what the question was. The question was, what role do you think that Jared Kushner is going to play? And is it going to be formal? And he was very clear that he didn't see him playing a formal role, but there were really areas, particularly in the Middle East and Israel, that Jared is passionate about and has a lot of expertise in. And he said, you know, he might be able to play a role in these specified areas. Again, no role has been specified. Nothing's been formalized. He was asked a hypothetical question. He made it clear that Jared wasn't looking for a particular formal role, but that his expertise in certain areas might come in helpful as he tries to make the world and the country a better place.
The ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, the Democrat Congressman Elijah Cummings, who's going to be joining us, by the way, in the next hour, he just sent a letter inquiring about the Trump Foundation. It reads in part, and let me read it to you. I am writing to request additional information on the apparent admission of Donald J. Trump Foundation to multiple instances in which the organization appears to have violated the legal prohibition against using charitable funds to benefit its leader, their family members, or other disqualified individuals, commonly known as self-dealing. I want your reaction to that letter, that statement that Elijah Cummings just released.
I think it's somewhat ironic and rich that Elijah Cummings suddenly cares about foundations and their activities after ignoring all of the concerns of the Clinton Foundation for the last several years. His newfound interest in foundations and how they operate is somewhat interesting. The Trump Foundation will continue to abide by all the laws. In New York, as you've seen, that they had some issues that the New York Attorney General brought up. They resolved those issues, but it'll continue to operate in full accordance with the law.
One final question on the incoming National Security Advisor to the President, retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. He said this about Islamism, and I'll put it up on the screen. Actually, I have the sound bite. This is what he said back in the summer. Listen to this.
That we are facing another ism, just like we faced Nazism and fascism and imperialism and communism. This is Islamism, and it is a vicious cancer inside the body of 1.7 billion people on this planet, and it has to be excised. Is
that appropriate?
Well, number one, I think it's appropriate to recognize that we're facing radical Islamic terrorism. We've got a threat that's coming after us here in this country that wants to destroy us. And I think General Flynn understands that threat probably better than anybody because of his previous posts as the head of DIA and other intelligence agencies, and he wants to confront it and keep America safe, number one. Number two, at the end of the day, every single one of the people that Donald Trump appoints is here to carry out his vision and carry out his thoughts on what things are. So General Flynn is uniquely qualified to carry that out. It's not about what he wants or what he thinks. It's about what Donald Trump thinks, and Donald Trump wants to confront that Islamic radical terrorism head on and keep this country safe.
Because General Flynn, as you know, also tweeted, and I'll put it up, he said, fear of Muslims is rational. He's going to be dealing with a lot of Muslim leaders. King Abdullah of Jordan, for example, a great friend of the United States, is a Muslim. When he makes statements like that, fear of Muslims is rational, isn't he potentially alienating some of the closest friends the U.S. has in the Middle East, people who the United States needs to fight ISIS, for example, al-Qaeda?
I think President-elect Trump has full confidence in General Flynn's diplomatic abilities, as well as his understanding of the intelligence landscape, and will do a fine job as his national security advisor.
But he said in that tweet, fear of Muslims is rational. Please forward this to others. The truth fears no questions. And that's the kind of statement that clearly alienates so many people. Well, there's one, he himself said there are 1.7 billion Muslims here in the United States, indeed around the world. And as I'm sure you agree, almost all of them are wonderful, decent, hardworking people. And he seems to be casting this wide net.
Well, I mean, I think we probably have to be much more careful in making sure that we're clear that it's radical Islamic terrorists and it's a sect within that. But I think, so as far as making sure that going forward we're much more clear as to who we have to be fearful of is probably important. But we need to understand that we shouldn't be so concerned with political correctness as much as making sure that this country's safe and that we understand the threats that we face and take them head on.
Yeah, he should have been more precise. Instead of saying fear of Muslims is rational, he should have said fear of radical Islamic terrorists is rational. That would have been a more precise way of phrasing it, but we'll continue these conversations, Sean, I'm sure many times down the road. Thanks very much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too, Wolf. Be safe.